We begin with the aftermath of an attempted coup in Russia, where new questions are swirling as we speak about the country's leadership. Now, just over the weekend, Evgeny Prigozhin ordered his paramilitary troops to march on Moscow, and he's the leader of the Kremlin-backed Wagner mercenary group. After facing threats from Russian President Vladimir Putin, Prigozhin called off the rebellion and reportedly reached a deal to go into exile in neighboring Belarus.
But earlier today, Prigozhin defended his actions. In an audio message, he said his goal was not to overthrow the Russian government. Instead, he claims the Wagner group wanted to protest the way it was being treated. And just last hour, President Biden weighed in on the situation for the first time. He says the U.S. is prepared for what he described as a range of scenarios.
I also convened our key allies on a Zoom call to make sure we're all on the same page. Let me emphasize, we gave Putin no excuse to blame this on the West or to blame this on NATO. We made clear that we were not involved. We had nothing to do with it. This was part of a struggle within the Russian system.
NBC News foreign correspondent Raf Sanchez is live in Kyiv for us now. Raf, good to see you. So what else are we hearing from Prigozhin today? And how are officials at the Kremlin responding to these new claims?
So, Vicky, this is the first time that we've heard from Prigozhin since we saw him leaving the city of Rostov-on-Don inside Russia on Saturday night after calling off his rebellion. And in this 11-minute voice note, he gives a justification for his actions. He says that Wagner mercenaries were the best fighters on the Russian side, that they were totally loyal to President Putin and to the state, but that they felt that they had no choice to do this because they were being starved of ammunition and of supplies and support here inside Ukraine. He says the immediate spark for his rebellion was what he says was a Russian military strike on a Wagner base on Friday that killed 30 of his own mercenaries. That's something the Kremlin denied happening. He's also saying that the reason he called off his advance at the gates of Moscow was to avoid the spectacle of Russian forces opening fire on each other, to avoid what he said would be Russian-on-Russian bloodshed. But he's also apologizing because as his Wagner troops did advance north, they killed a number of Russian pilots in helicopters and in aircraft. He says he deeply regrets that. What he did not say, guys, where he is now, what his future looks like, and who is in charge of the Wagner group and what his mercenaries are going to do. So still a lot of questions even after that long voice note.
Well, Raf Morgan here. Speaking of those lingering questions, I mean, when we just sort of look at the big picture at this point, how could the sort of short-lived rebellion impact now the war in Ukraine as we look to the days ahead? I mean, what is the message today from the Ukrainian president? What is Vladimir Zelensky saying?
So Zelensky making a surprise trip, Morgan, to the east, where he met with Ukrainian troops taking part in the counteroffensive. Real contrast between the Ukrainian leader and the Russian leader. Zelensky on camera meeting with his men. Putin, we don't know where he is. We haven't seen him since Saturday. We spoke to a Ukrainian military officer earlier today. He said even if this rebellion is over, it has damaged Russian morale. He is sure it is going to have an impact on Russia's performance on the battlefield. But, Morgan, we have not yet seen any sort of major collapse of the Russian lines. We haven't seen the Ukrainians be able to take advantage of this in a big way. Guys.
All right. NBC News foreign correspondent Raf Sanchez following all of this from the beginning. Raf, thank you so much.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.